I've asked you a lot about solidarity, kind of some of what you've been doing in your city. Talk to your fellow African Americans for a minute. Talk to us about kind of the balm in Gilead. What does it mean for us to really really sustain equilibrium in the midst of this blow yet again, and in the midst of kind of some of the frustration of the silence of the broader church? Pastor us for a minute, because
Sure.
we can't always just center the solidarity conversation, because every time you're asking somebody to stand in solidarity, there's somebody who's at the core of the hurt, and we have to minister to our own as well. So
Definitely. We've got to lean into the gospel that brought us over. Many of us who look like us who are in covenant are certainly outnumbered, but many of us are really committed to the Mosaic concept of really being this great blend of theology and culture. But I think within that blending, and our church is one of those, we can't separate out the dynamic nature of the faith that grew out of the Black church. And by talking about that, it doesn't mean that we can't be a part of covenant, because we are, or part of diversity, because we are. But within that history that many of us who are Black sort of put aside when we become multicultural. Because multiculturalism should mean that we can bring our distinctives and they're celebrated, we hold it together. It shouldn't be this blend where everything loses its distinction, because that will then weaken us. Multi-ethnicity should proliferate identity, not blur it. And so within my tradition, I think about the folks who were sharecroppers and couldn't vote, and were Black women raising single kids, but they were praying for miracles and singing and leading people to Christ and leading their children to Christ. And they had a prayer without a program, without a minute by minute, without earpieces and ear monitors. And they cried out to Jesus, and Jesus showed up. I think we know how to do church. I think we know how to plant churches. I think we know how to vitalize churches. And I think we know how to even have church. But do we know how to put all of that away and just lay out before God and just say, God, I'm scared, I'm overwhelmed? Because those are prayers our grandmothers prayed, and those are prayers her grandmothers prayed, and those are prayers that her mothers prayed. And I think that we as Black people have got to remember that many of us don't worship in the same tradition that we became a Christian. Let's just be honest. Covenant is not Black Pentecostal, although they work to tune it up. Covenant is not Black Baptist. And so we come into a denomination like this, a meeting like this, worship services like this, and it's a part of the new us, but it's not the us that we necessarily grew up in and around. And those people would moan sometimes, and they would groan. We now call it lament. Dr. Ra and others have helped us to regain this language of lament, but they used to cry out to God, oh God, oh God. I know sometimes when I'm talking with Reverend Brendan McNeil, and we both have some of the church backgrounds, and we'll be talking stories about stuff that's going on that's tough. And one of us will say, you know what the old saints used to say, oh God, come Jesus, come Jesus, come. Listen, Dominique, you remember, your folks remember, I know Dr. Catherine remember, and when they said come, he would come. I understand theology and omnipresence, but listen, they would say, come Jesus, and Jesus would show up. I know he's everywhere, but he would show up. And I think we have to get back to caring for ourselves and the elements of our theology that taught us how to dig in when it's hard, our identity when others are denying us, how to bounce back from pain, because pain was ever present with them. I think that there's a generation of us that thought that certain isms were gone, so we sort of let our guard down. They were ready, they were prepared, they were equipped, they put on the whole armor of God, and we got to put that stuff back on. And so I know this is just symbolic, but sometimes I have to just go listen to, Bishop G.E. Patterson on YouTube, sing some old Church of God in Christ songs, or play old cassette tapes of my grandmother praying, or making sure I get back to my quiet time and the word time. But I'm just saying, God has not left us, and God still sustains us. We have achieved, we chased the American dream. We can't lose our world view, that we've gotten all of these other things, but we can't lose our soul. So let's evaluate. Are we as committed to our community? Are we as vocal on issues that we want our non-Black brothers and sisters to be on? Are we supporting those causes? Or are we just asking white people to support those causes? Are we showing up for those things, or just things that move our career? Are we known outside our church circles? Does the community know our name? When you come, do they know who you are? So let's take care of ourselves. But if we're going to be tired, let's go down swinging for the gospel. If we're going to be tired, let's preach Christ and Christ crucified. Let's weep with those who are weeping, mourn with those who are mourning, rejoice with those who are rejoicing. But let's take care of ourselves, not only in the rest, but let's do the work that is gratifying and replenishing, because it is the work of God. And that is to bring salt and light to the most broken and destitute among us. Let's stay on our knees and our faces. Let's bring back the old traditions of fasting and prayer and tarrying. Let's wait for God. We can't have this microwave approach to a slow cooker theology and faith that our grandmamas had. Those people knew Jesus when everybody said they were crazy. Nope, you can't vote. Nope, you're going to die. Nope, you're sick. Nope, we're going to take your children. They just said, but Jesus, but Jesus, but Jesus. And them folks got through. So I'm finding that I'm relying on the strength of those who led me to Christ, and using that to refresh me during this time.
Man, I mean, and when you were talking, I was thinking about, some of the old hymns and some of the spirituals, I got it right to the tree of life. Like,
Come on.
that's such a rich theological claim that says that in the face of white supremacy, in the face of all of this hatred and systemic abuse, I know that I am equitably made in the image of God, and no person and no oppression can deny me of that truth. And to live as if that's true when everything around you tells you that it's not true, but you know that you have a power deeper and stronger than all of the forces of this world at work within you. That's the kind of witness that I think we have to go back to. So I think you're exactly right, and that's what sustains us in the midst of what feels like despair. And we have to remember those traditions and those practices and go back to those spaces in Kairos moments like this.